Christmas won't be Christmas without any presents, grumbled Jo, lying on the rug. Well, hello, and welcome to my channel. I am so glad that you've joined me today because I'm introducing a new project that I have been planning for over 6 months and that will take a lot of time in 2021 to complete. I'm glad that you are here for the journey. This project will include 3 parts. The first part includes me rereading Little Women, and I invite you to read along with me. I first read this book when I was 11 years old, and I fell in love with Jo March. I could relate to her in many ways. Her major character traits early on in the book of being tomboyish, active, enjoying all things literary, all of those were things that characterized me at the age of 11, and so I related to her very strongly at that age. I have not read this book since I was a teenager, and so it's been really fun to begin rereading it through a woman's eyes, through an adult's eyes, because you see things differently. So I hope you will join me in the reading. I will be giving you the reading schedule here in just a little bit. If you do decide to join me, please comment below or comment on social media and let me know that you're joining me. And I would love to hear your thoughts on how you would characterize Jo, because that is the purpose of me reading Little Women. I'm going to be characterizing Jo. I know that sounds very English teacherish, but I am an English teacher. And I am characterizing her for a purpose. I really want to create a wardrobe that is very realistic to Jo's station, the time period that this book is set in, and also to the character traits of Jo and what she may have chosen to wear based on the fashions of the period and what was available to her given her station in life and where she lived. The fact that she lived in America, in the northern part of the States during the Civil War, also affects how she would have been able to dress. So that is my purpose for characterizing her, is to ultimately create a wardrobe of things she may have worn throughout this book. We know the book covers a little over 3 years. I'm thinking about 4, maybe 5 years, and those are all the mid-1860s. So I have been looking at fashions of that era to determine what she may have worn. Although I first read Little Women when I was 11 years old, and I reread it very often in my teen years, I had not done very much with it in my adult years until 2018 when the miniseries came out on Little Women. I really loved that miniseries. I thought it was a very accurate representation of the book. And after watching that miniseries, I was inspired to begin creating some dresses that I called Little Women costumes. Now, I will admit, my first attempt or two was not very historically accurate. But after watching the 2019 version of the movie early this year, I got very interested in the historical accuracy side of how the March sisters would have been clothed. And so I began doing some research, and I have actually created several different outfits this year already that were inspired by Little Women and that time period, including a dress that I felt like Beth would have worn, an afternoon dress that I thought Jo may have worn when she went visiting in the afternoon with Amy later in the book, a skirt that I think Jo would have worn during the war years. And finally, the dress that I'm actually wearing right now was also inspired by the March sisters and the book Little Women. I wanted to create a dress that someone of my station in life, working class, would have worn, which is what the March sisters were. And I specifically created this one with Jo in mind, with the red accents of the shawl. There's a hat that goes with it that has red accents as well, and the practicality of this dress, because we know that Amy and Meg liked a little bit fancier dresses, and Beth, I feel like, would have worn a little bit softer style given her characteristics. So I am publishing this video on Christmas Eve because the book begins the day before Christmas. And so I thought it was only appropriate to begin this series and this project on Christmas Eve. However, as it's gotten closer to Christmas this year, I've realized there's many similarities in what Jo and her sisters were feeling that first Christmas in the book and what we may be feeling this year during a Christmas that is affected by a pandemic. As the book opens, the sisters are feeling very discouraged because they can't see Father, they don't have any money to really have a Christmas, and that may be things that resonate with us as readers this Christmas, because I know we are not able to see many of the people that we would normally see and be around during Christmas because of the pandemic. So it makes it very relatable, even though this book is set over 150 years ago. So as I mentioned, there will be a reading schedule, and I've already reread the first 7 chapters. So if you want to join along, I would definitely reread those 7 chapters before I unveil the first outfit. I will be giving you a few details about that outfit a little later in this video, however. So after each section of reading, I will be creating a video that unveils the dress I think she might have worn for either that section of the book or for a specific activity or event that occurs in that section of the book. Now, I do not have a specific time schedule as far as when I will release each video. I am a teacher by day, and so I cannot guarantee that I will have things out by a certain time. However, I'm going to try to get at least one out each month. So that gives you kind of a general time frame for your reading. I'm hoping to do them more frequently than once a month, but we will see how my time goes throughout 2021. So the first set of chapters is chapters 1 through 7. The next set will be chapters 8 through 14, then chapter 15 by itself, then chapters 16 through 29, chapters 30 through 36, chapter 37 through 40, and then chapters 41 through 46. And then after I finish rereading each of those, I will of course unveil the outfit, hopefully about once every 3 to 4 weeks in a YouTube video. And then also, if you're not already following me on social media, I definitely recommend that you do that, because sometimes I will post details before I get them on YouTube out there. So as I have reread chapters 1 through 7, I have characterized Jo. I have come up with 4 major characteristics that I'm going to use to help create her first outfit. And of course, the most notable one to me is that she is a tomboy. And this becomes apparent extremely early on, because at the beginning of chapter 1, Amy is arguing with Jo about being a tomboy, and Jo says, "It's bad enough to be a girl anyway, when I like boys' games and work and manners. I can't get over my disappointment in not being a boy, and it's worse than ever now, for I'm dying to go and fight with Papa, and I can only stay at home and knit like a poky old woman." And Jo shook the blue army sock till the needles rattled like castanets, and her ball bounded across the room. Of course, this is repeated several times throughout the first 7 chapters, making it very obvious that Jo prefers boys' activities to girls' activities. So I think that that would also become evident in her manner of dress and the things that she chose to wear, the colors that she chose to wear, all of those things. So I will be taking that into consideration as I create her first outfit. The second character trait that stands out with Jo is also in chapter 1, and that is her love of all things literary. And that was one of the things that I related to as an 11-year-old and throughout my teen years. She not only loves reading, as becomes apparent when she says she wants to spend her Christmas money on buying a new book, but she also loves writing. And this is when the sisters are talking about the play that they're going to be performing on Christmas, and Beth exclaims, "I don't see how you can write and act such splendid things, Jo. You're a regular Shakespeare." And so there we know she not only loves reading, but she also loves writing. And along with this, of course, is her imagination, right? She also is extremely adventurous and active. Jo is someone that takes action. She doesn't just sit around. She wants to take action. That's part of the reason she wants to be out there with Father, fighting, because she feels like she can actually do something then. And one of the times that we notice her taking action is in chapter 5. And it's a cold, wintry day. And Meg goes, "What in the world are you going to do now, Jo?" asked Meg one snowy afternoon as her sister came tramping through the hall in rubber boots, old sack and hood, with a broom in one hand and a shovel in the other. "Going out for exercise," answered Jo, with a mischievous twinkle in her eyes. So even though it's a cold day and most of the girls are trying to stay warm inside, Jo has to do something. She has to go outside and shovel the paths, right? This also becomes apparent when Amy gets in trouble at school in chapter 7, because when Amy comes home, all of the sisters are upset, but Jo is the one that goes to the school to get Amy's stuff and to tell Mr. Davis that Amy will not be coming back to school there. So Jo is definitely the one that takes action first. In addition to that, she is very empathetic and passionate. So we all know she has a temper. That becomes very apparent early on. And her and Mommy repeatedly talk about that throughout the course of the book. But along with that temper, she also has other deep feelings. So referencing the example of her going to get Amy's stuff from the school when Amy gets in trouble in chapter 7, we also have Jo wrathfully propose that Mr. Davis be arrested without delay. So she feels deeply, not just when she feels like she's been wronged, but also when she feels like someone else has been wronged. In addition, it's not just when someone has been wronged, it's also just when she feels like someone's in need or she wants to help someone. So going back to chapter 5, her ulterior motive for going out that day in the snow was actually because she wanted to check on the Lawrence boy. And she says to herself, that boy is suffering for society and fun. His grandpa does not know what's good for him and keeps him shut up all alone. She actually ends up going in the house that day and cheering up Laurie because he's sick, and ultimately talking to his grandpa and convincing his grandpa that his grandpa needs to let him socialize more. This is apparent even earlier in the book, though, when Meg and Jo go to the Christmas party, and Jo hides some of the sweets from the Christmas party in her stuff and brings them home to Beth and Amy. So Jo is just very thoughtful and feeling and empathetic throughout these 7 chapters. So I think that that's one of her major character traits as well. Of course, it makes her feel everything deeply, whether it's anger, sadness, or happiness. So based on those character traits, the color scheme that I've chosen for Jo is red and blue. And let me explain why. So we know in chapter 3 that Jo has a maroon dress. That's her best dress that she wears to the Christmas party with Meg. So we already know from that that she likes the color red. Red is actually mentioned several times throughout the book in reference to Jo's wardrobe. It seems very appropriate because red signifies most everything that Jo is characterized by. Courage, anger, passion, sacrifice, action, all of those things that are symbolized by the color red, and all of those things also describe Jo. So I feel like that would be a predominant color in her wardrobe. The other predominant color I've chosen for her wardrobe is the color blue. She wants to be a drummer on the front lines of the Union Army with her dad, and blue was the color of the Union uniforms. So I feel like that symbolizes very well her desire there to be in the action and on the front lines. And I feel like she would have worn blue to be patriotic. She also was tomboyish by her own admittance, and blue is most often associated with boys, especially in this time period. And so I feel like that also would have been a reason she would have chosen to wear blue on a regular basis. So historically speaking, as I've already mentioned, of course, they live in the northern United States during the early 1860s at this point, because the Civil War is still going on. They would have been working class because the girls are having to work to help. Mommy is having to work. They mentioned that they have lost money, and so that's why they're having to work. They do have Hannah, so they are a little more well-to-do than some of the working class, I would say, but I feel like based on the frequency of them talking about having to pinch pennies and not being able to have what they want and different things like that, that their wardrobe would have been mostly working class. Now, Jo is 15 at the opening of the book, and we find out later on that her birthday is in November, so she would have just turned 15 at this point. And girls' dresses were lengthened an inch every year until they reached their ankles at the age of 18. So given that Jo is 15, her dresses would have been about 2 inches above her ankle at this point. So when I looked at dresses for girls wear in the 1860s, one of the most common ones is actually the one that I'm wearing right now. They would often wear dresses that were just a simple waisted dress with a button up front. However, there is one or two other styles that seem to be pretty common in the 1860s for teen girls, and so I'm going to be going with a different style since I've already created this one. The style that I've chosen has a yoked bodice and then has gathers across the bust line that then gather back in at the waist. This was a common style for younger girls of that time period and seems to carry over even for teen girls. And I'm assuming that's because it had a lot of room for growth because of the fullness in the bodice, and then they would put growth tucks in the sleeves and the hems that they could let out, and so therefore it gave a lot of room for growth for both little girls and teen girls. Most dresses for the working class at that point would have been made of cotton or linsey woolsey. I cannot find a source for linsey woolsey anymore, so I will be making cotton dresses for most of Jo's wardrobe because that is the type of fiber that she would have been able to afford, her and her family. I have created a Pinterest board that links to my research and photographs of extant dresses and even fashion plates of the era. And so if you are interested in following along as I'm doing that research, please visit that Pinterest board. The link is below in the description box. So the first outfit that I'm going to be creating will be, of course, for Jo at the age of 15 for the first 7 chapters of the book. And so I have this cotton homespun blue plaid that I have found. And so I will be making the girl's dress that I've already shown you inspiration photos for out of this. And then I will be trimming it with some red midi braid that I found in a D-stash group. And so I'll be doing some designs on the bodice and the sleeves to bring the red out in this blue cotton plaid. We will see how long it takes me to make the dress. And of course, once I get this dress finished, I will be doing the next video where I talk about the next set of chapters in the book, chapters 8 through 14, and the outfit that I'm planning for those chapters. In addition to creating a wardrobe for Jo of what she would have worn on the outside, I will also be creating a YouTube series on dressing Jo from the inside out. So I already have some of the 1860s undergarments made that Jo would have worn, but I do have a few more to make. So stay tuned for those videos being published as well if you're interested on learning how to make foundation garments for the 1860s. I will be giving step-by-step instructions in many of those videos on how to do that. If you are not already following me on Facebook or social media, I have linked both of those accounts below. Make sure that you follow the hashtag #BecomingJoMarch on Instagram, because that is what I will be tagging anything I do on Instagram that has to do with this series. If you like this project, please read along in the novel with me. Comment below. Let me know where you're at. Let me know who's your favorite character. Let me know how you would characterize Jo. Do you agree with how I characterized Jo for these first 7 chapters or not? And if you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.